G'day there guys, this is Sarah from Amateur Filmies. I hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to take you through what I've been watching in the month of September. I have watched 52 films. It's a lot, but we have been in stage 4 lockdown in New South Wales for about a month and a half now. So there's been plenty of time to watch movies, so don't judge me. Alright, we'll get straight into it. First up we have Outback, which is a movie we saw on Stan, or I saw on Stan. Matt didn't bother watching it because I wouldn't have put him through this, because it is a terrible survival horror. The characters are, they're an American tourist in the Australian desert, and they make every bad decision you could ever make. And they go against their sort of common sense, and they go against basic survival skills. And yeah, it was very dumb. I would not waste your time watching it. We have Pathology, and this is sort of like a mid-2000s gory horror that features a lot of sex scenes, very of its time, but still very enjoyable, and it has Alyssa Milano in it, so I can't really complain. Then we have Never Been Kissed. This is one of my favourite rom-coms ever. It's such a good movie. However, I do take issue with the main romance that Drew Barrymore's character has with her teacher. You know, this movie came out in 1999, and I watched it as a kid and I really enjoyed it. But obviously, being a teacher now, I can see how problematic that relationship is. But I can still enjoy the movie for what it is, just cannot condone any modern iterations or remakes of that movie. It would just be super inappropriate. We have John Tucker Must Die, a fantastic, cheesy sort of rom-com, really fun to watch. Definitely not like a great movie by any means, but really enjoyable. Confessions of a Shopaholic. I think Isla Fisher is the best scene to come out of Australia since Hugh Jackman. So, fantastic movie whenever she's in the lead. And yeah, really highly recommend that if you're on a bit of a rom-com binge, as I was obviously. The Devil Wears Prada. Now, this could be easily considered a chick flick, but it's actually a fantastic drama, and I feel like Meryl Streep's performance in this movie was her most iconic role, and you might argue that for any other movie of hers, but The Devil Wears Prada is fantastic. And then later on that day, Matt and I watched The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Now, this movie was recommended to me by my sister. It was a very 90s movie, and she said it was terrifying. So we thought we'd give it a try. It was actually pretty good. To be honest, it did feel like a daytime television movie, like a sort of Lifetime movie, but it was the best quality Lifetime movie you could ask for. And it wasn't necessarily scary, it was more sort of nerve-wracking. Seeing this woman pose as a family's nanny when she's really trying to steal the woman's family, and it's very dramatic, and yeah, we love to see that. And then we have Ever After, and this was continuing on my rom-com binge, another Drew Barrymore classic. Ever After is a fantastic, probably the best iteration of the Cinderella story that I can think of. I think it's a fantastic movie. It's dramatic. It might be a little bit cheesy at times, but I think it's beautiful, and I really love Dougray Scott in that as well. I think he's probably like the perfect Prince Charming. We have The Belko Experiment. I was putting together the movie shelf in our room, and so I binge watched movies as I was putting it together. It took me a while. The first one that I watched was The Belko Experiment. I absolutely love this movie. That being said, I think it definitely could have been done better. Don't ask me how, but there are certain things that I wish they had focused on more than certain scenes that they actually did, if that makes sense. And then we have The Grudge 2. Now, this is the American Grudge 2. While there are some scenes that are absolutely ridiculous, it is still a pretty decent horror sequel. Although there is a scene where a girl gets pulled through her hoodie by the ghost of Kayako, and it is the most ridiculous scene I think I've ever seen in a movie, but still really enjoyable. If you see it, definitely watch it. Slaughterhouse Rules. I was actually waiting for this one to come out for the longest time because I remember seeing the trailers for it. Then I heard nothing, and then all of a sudden it pops up on Netflix, and I was like, okay, definitely watching this. I think this was really good. It had a really great vibe, but the movie itself wasn't amazing. The creatures, I'm not going to give too much away, but the creatures that are the main villain within this story don't actually come out until like the last half hour of the film, which is a bit annoying, but I had a really good time just watching the characters. Like, the characters are pretty magnetic, and you had Simon Pegg and Michael Sheen playing characters. So yeah, it was still an enjoyable movie. We have Derailed. I think I found this on Amazon Prime, and I was like, oh, I'll give it a go because it said it was under the tag zombies, and I do love me a good zombie film. Derailed, do not recommend. Do not watch it. It is a waste of your time. And I thought, oh, it has Lance Henriksen in it. How bad can it be? Still pretty bad. Don't waste your time on it. It was about, can't even remember what it was about. It was like people got derailed. Their train got derailed, and then aliens started attacking them in the water. But then it turns out those people were ghosts or something. Something ridiculous. This movie, I didn't even realise this movie was Australian. This is Sweet River. The most boring ghost story I have ever seen. And I'm usually very patient with ghost stories because I think, oh, they've got to build tension. I've seen Bly Manor, I've seen Haunting of Hill House. I know, some series and some movies need to build that tension. Sweet River led to nothing. It was a complete waste of time. Valentine. Now, we received the Scream Factory release of this, and I forced Matt to watch it. And because it was a movie that me and my family had sort of sworn by, I'm not sure why, but it was actually really fun to watch. The movie itself is okay. It's sort of fun. Wouldn't really watch it again, personally. And then I finally got around to watching Them, which is, I thought it was like a French extremist movie, right? And that's why I bought it. And it's a home invasion, so I thought, this is going to be brutal. I'm going to love this. I don't get why it was so highly recommended, personally. No offense to anyone who really loves it. It wasn't scary, it wasn't gory, it wasn't violent either. Nothing really, things happened, but I wasn't too I wasn't too scared about it or anything, so a little bit disappointed in that one, but that's all right. And then I watched Livid. That was a little bit of a different story. That was really fun. And I really loved the world that was built in Livid of the eternal vampires. It got a little bit too fantastical at the end. Wasn't really a big fan of the ending, but overall, still really good. And then we watched Becky. Now, I'd seen a lot of hype about this movie, and Matt was like, oh, wait to watch it with me. I was like, yeah, cool. We finally sat down to watch it, and it was such a letdown. It could have been amazing. We saw Kevin James as this sort of big hulking character, and I thought he was going to be like Vince Vaughn in Brawl in Cell Block 99, like really intense, serial killer vibes, but he was so disappointing in it. It was just a little bit predictable, a little bit cheesy. And then we have the Japanese movie Premonition, which has an American remake with Sandra Bullock. This movie, it was pretty good. It was pretty enjoyable. It was very eerie, but it's not really, it doesn't pack the same punch as its sort of J-horror, like Brothers and Sisters, the other ones that had sort of come out around a similar time. But very cool premise, though, that the man receives newspaper articles detailing events that are yet to happen, and he foresees his own daughter's death at the beginning, and it's really eerie. But yeah, not the best J-horror I've seen, but still really enjoyable. And then we have, we started to watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. I'm not going to go into a great depth of detail about this because Matt is doing a ranking video on these. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first one, amazing, brilliant, like perfect. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, fun. I remember liking it a lot more the first time I watched it. The second time I watched it, there was too much screaming. It served no purpose. It was dragged on a little bit. Dennis Hopper's character within Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 did not need to be there. His character served literally no purpose. And if you've watched it, you'll get what I mean. Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. I actually thought this was a pretty strong sequel overall. I don't know how well it's rated, but I really enjoyed it. I really loved Viggo Mortensen playing a evil character. You don't get to see that often. And then I watched this Netflix movie, Kate, that had Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Woody Harrelson in it. That was really fun. It was sort of like a Japanese spy thriller. She's been, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character is a spy and she's been poisoned and she has 24 hours to live and she needs to find whoever killed her and she wants to take her revenge because she realizes that her life's amounted to nothing and she wants to sort of get back that last shred of happiness that she did in taking revenge. And, you know, she realizes that the revenge is something that she didn't want in the first place. Or it was, a really nice sort of poignant message that I'm ruining right now. But yeah, no, that was really fun. And then we got into the Nightmare on Elm Street series, which again, I think Matt will be doing another ranking video coming up to Halloween, hopefully. This one, I was the most excited about all month. This was amazing, and we finally got to watch it. Malignant, James Wan film. Please watch it if you haven't already. I know it's really hard to get in Australia because we have to wait until lockdown ends to get an official theatrical release, and they're not releasing it on any streaming services here. But please do watch it. It is brilliant. I knew that it was batshit. I knew that it was going to be super crazy. I just didn't realize how crazy it was, and I was sort of waiting for that twist. I didn't know when it was coming, so I was like, no, I just got to watch, see how it goes, and amazing. It impressed me at every turn. It was, I think it was James Wan's probably his best film, and that's saying a lot because he has a fantastic filmography. And then I wanted to watch more by other Australian directors, so I watched Daybreakers by the Spearig brothers, Ethan Hawke, Sam Neill sort of vampire movie. This is really fun. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't as good as I thought it was when I first watched it, which is the case for quite a lot of movies, unfortunately. But it was really fun, and I really love the world that is built. That was probably my favourite part. Like, the first half of the movie is so strong because it shows the society, it's this beautiful sort of dystopian society, and I think definitely the first half of the film is much stronger. Then I watched City of the Dead, which was in my zombie collection because I saw the title. I was like, oh, cool, zombie movie. Went into it. It's not a zombie movie, unfortunately. It's a witch movie. And a pretty decent one at that. Nothing amazing. Christopher Lee is in it. Personally, not my cup of tea. And then we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. If I could unsee that movie, I would happily unsee it. The only redeeming quality about this movie is probably Matthew McConaughey's absolutely crazy performance. And I didn't actually realise that all right was such an iconic catchphrase that he had been using since 1995. Like, that catchphrase is as old as I am. So yeah, crazy facts. If you're looking for a decent B-grade zombie movie to watch, or you're willing to watch any type of zombie movie, I do highly recommend Zombie Night. The production value was surprisingly good for a B-grade zombie movie. So yeah, do highly recommend that one. I do not recommend Klinger, even though I've given it a better rating. Not as good. Don't waste your time on it, personally. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, fantastic film. I think it's a really strong remake, and I think part of that has to do with the characterization and like the choice of characters. I think Jessica Biel is a fantastic final girl. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. We watched this with my brothers and we all agreed that this was definitely one of the weakest of the series, although it was still really enjoyable and there were so many entertaining scenes that they really loved. And then I thought I'd go in a different direction and watch one of the most depressing movies ever made, The Road. I hadn't actually seen it before, and so I thought I'd give it a crack. I thought, no, I'm feeling very emotionally stoic. I think I can handle it. Let's watch it. It was really good. I think it was very bleak, and it's really hard to rate a movie like that because it does the job so well of making you feel, sucking the soul out of you, that you can't really sort of put to words and think critically about how the movie was, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it was fantastic. The characterizations were beautiful, and I thought the acting was brilliant. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, that's my favourite of the entire series. I think it's so much fun. And then I was actually recommended this movie by Matt's mum, St. Elmo's Fire. This is obviously one of those 80s classics that everyone's seen. I thought it was really good, and what brought me in was the characters and, the drama in between them. Their relationships was so interesting to watch. I never got bored in one scene. I thought it was really, all the performances were so magnetic, you know. And then I thought I'd watch another 80s classic, 16 Candles. And I had seen this one before. I absolutely love it. I think it's beautiful. It's got so much heart. The only thing I would say is, and it, you know, not surprisingly, it hasn't aged well. And there are sort of scenes that are a bit questionable to do with people being drunk and consent. But we won't get into that one. I'm sure everyone would agree that by today's standards, it's a little bit iffy. I'm sure it was pretty questionable back then. So we've got A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. This was one of the more forgettable films in the franchise. I can't really remember a whole deal that goes on in that movie, and I'd only seen it recently, so I should probably get my memory checked. And then Encino Man. This is one of those films I watched growing up. You can't really go wrong with a Brendan Fraser comedy in the 90s. I think it was fantastic. Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. This is actually a really strong follow-up to the Jessica Biel remake. And yeah, really enjoyable, very brutal. However, I will say the ending to that movie is physically impossible. Like, what happens to the character, there is no way it could have happened, if that makes sense. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Is the biggest cop-out ever. That's the only thing that bugs me at the movie. Other than that, it was really fun. Anti-Birth was one of those Scream Factory releases we got from Craig, but we hadn't actually seen it yet, so I thought I'd sit down and watch it. It was actually really enjoyable. Natasha Lyonne as a lead is really sort of magnetic, and I've been saying that about a lot of movies today, but I think she is a really compelling lead, and she's the perfect fit for this character who's like sort of like a stoner, drug addict person. You know, she plays that well. She played that in Orange is the New Black. But yeah, I think it was fantastic, and she plays a person who sort of just wants to be left alone, but then she gets impregnated with like an unknown being, and then she's sort of dealing with that, and it's just really funny seeing her normalize the crazy stuff that's happening around her. Yeah, really psychedelic, very enjoyable. I do recommend that one. Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. Another movie I cannot remember super clearly. It was one of the more forgettable. The thing I do remember about it, though, is that the child in question, who's being portrayed, is the little annoying kid from Jurassic Park. Yeah, that's the only thing I can really remember about that movie. Satanic Panic. This was brilliant. I am so glad I watched this. This is an Arrow release, and it really took me by surprise how low the ratings were on IMDb. And when I finally watched it, it was really fun, so enjoyable. The ending, there were certain elements to it where I thought they could have gone in a little bit like a different direction, but overall, I thought it was, brilliant, really fun, really sort of indie, but has a really good cast. Really love that one. Definitely recommend that one. There's a really good Arrow release of it. Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. This was not a good movie. The only thing I will say about it was it was really enjoyable seeing their take on like video games, and because it was obviously made in 1991, sort of seeing their take on the video game genre, if that makes sense. And I think they were showing off the Power Glove or something, one of those new inventions that was all the rage back then. I didn't actually know it existed. My brothers pointed out, Power Glove, and I was like, okay, whatever that is. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, probably my second favourite within the series. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I really loved how they incorporated the meta elements of like the story within a story, the movie within a movie, and yeah, absolutely brilliant. Such a good, like refreshing, I guess it's technically not a sequel, but it is like a really refreshing sequel to see after seeing, when we binge watched it, seeing like sequel after sequel of, Freddy getting a little bit tired, and then he sort of just gets this makeover, and it's really great to see. Intruders. Now, I always think when someone logs a short film on Letterboxd, it feels like cutting corners, when it isn't, because I think short films are just as valid as feature-length films and stuff. But yeah, it's just really funny whenever I think about that. But Intruders, I actually saw a short for this on TikTok, and I thought I'd go check it out. This is actually a brilliant short film. Please check it out. Highly recommend that one. Really, really scary. Not like gory or anything. No real jump scares. Just really horrifying. Freddy vs. Jason. This is bread and butter, early 2000s, sort of like grungy, grimy horror. Beautiful. And beautiful soundtrack. A Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Do not recommend. I thought, oh, you know, maybe it's been a while since I've watched it. Maybe I'll give it another try. It's terrible. The worst bit about it, and it completely ruins the movie for me, is Jackie Earle Haley's sort of facelift, what they've done. They've revamped Freddy's face. It's not scary. And it has to be scary because Robert Englund's character was super terrifying, and they've just sort of ruined Freddy. And that's the whole point of these films. Texas Chainsaw 3D. This was pretty good to start with. It was really fun. And then it sort of entered like the sort of twist territory. And yeah, it ran off the rails pretty quickly, especially in those last few minutes. Really ruined it for me. So Dark Place is an Aboriginal horror anthology that I saw on ABC iView. It was really good, really quality. Some segments were better than others. The segment in particular about the Aboriginal women being sold into sex trafficking, it wasn't graphic or anything. Nothing was really shown. It was more implied. It was a really good comment on how Australian society values Aboriginal women. And it explored some really dark themes. Some, you know, as with a lot of anthologies, some you recommend, some segments you recommend, some of them you don't. Be Devil. I thought I'd watch this after Dark Place because this is another Aboriginal horror anthology. But this one was made in 1993, so I thought, okay, it's a little bit older, but let's give it a try. The production design, the production value felt very sloppy. Even though it was made in the 90s, it felt like something made in the 70s. It wasn't scary. Some of the characterizations was really interesting. Some of the storylines were interesting, but overall wouldn't really recommend it. It's sort of, you know, disappointing to say because I've been on a binge of all these Aboriginal horrors and stuff, and I thought, oh, cool, another Aboriginal horror. Don't recommend it, unfortunately. And then tonight I thought I would watch another two horror shorts, again cutting corners. Then we have Man on a Train. Again, I was brought from TikTok and I thought, okay, I've seen a clip from this, I need to watch it. Very disappointing, pretty disappointing. Don't really recommend it as a horror short. It was fun, but not as scary as I'd hoped it would be. And then this other one I saw on YouTube, I thought, okay, let's give it a go. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. Don't Look Away. This was pretty decent. Really cool concept. The idea that someone appears in your yard and you have to stare at them and you can't look away from them, otherwise they'll get closer. And it's sort of, I feel like I've seen that trope in other fiction, but I feel like that's a really cool and creepy idea for a horror short. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. But that has been my month in movies. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if there are other movies that you would recommend from the ones I've watched. But yeah, I hope you're all doing well, and take care, and we'll see you in the next video.